In today's episode, client tried to screw me by locking me out of my own system. Cheating student thought he had me fooled. Fell right into my trap. So let's get started. Client tried to screw me by locking me out of my own system. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating simple HTML sites to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day I was coding big-ish custom websites was a rental company. Now I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that he was sharp as a tack, backstabbing and conniving. He was a lawyer after all. So I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig, where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show in progress only a week into the progress. He wants to see the website front now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front-end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back-end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front-end first, design, and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agree to this without asking for it to be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design now. Now, the contract stated that I was given free rein of the design decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So I make a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a Macromedia product, before the Adobe acquisition, and within 2 days I show him. He's not impressed and demands a different direction, and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and do just what he wants. I design a new layout, with his list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go. A never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the backend. I point out that he himself changed the order in how the project was being done, and had demanded that I do the front-end design first instead of the backend as stated in the contract, which he now turns on me and says, "Yes, the contract we both signed says you will have a working backend to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism." Okay, I now have 12 days to do a backend for the site. So I get a friend to help me and we work tirelessly through a weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point he has only paid the security on the contract, about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, "Well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish XX work and then I'll pay as per the contract." Remembering now all the warnings I had heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code just to be safe. More on that later. So now it's the end of the month, we have a front-end design he is okay with, a backend that has been finished to about 85% of what is required according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server, and showed him this in a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 quit/s upstream from the server it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the productional server he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front-end and back-end, I can see he's immensely happy with it, although he would never say so out loud. He is trying to hide his smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam with all the added ways he can now start making money from. Anyway, he now says that it's way too slow, this is wrong, that is wrong. Blah blah blah. Client, I want you to put it up on my prod server and see how the speed is. Me, okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. Okay, I wait a few days, and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me to the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his prod server so he can take a look at it, under beta.hisdomain.tld. I then send him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project, to pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right. So I knew he would most likely try to screw me. What I also suspected was that the email he sent me with the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. ProRevenge 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did was if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my admin, from the system without one setting being changed in the config first, the system will first delete and purge the database, and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. ProRevenge 2. Since it is considered forgery to spoof an email, especially from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities, and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. ProRevenge 3. I sold the system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him, and last I knew he was now blacklisted from owning a company as well as he lost his right to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% he paid at the beginning and for working for just over 5 months on this project that is hardly anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Cheating student thought he had me fooled. Fell right into my trap. So, I am a cancer researcher and a guest professor at an university's School of Medicine, teaching my specialty, imaging. Besides the usual acquisitions of medical images using MRI, CT, etc. Imaging has a lot to do with image processing. Some days I am just a glorified programmer/IT guy. And as anyone who has ever programmed anything will tell you, coding is a very personal activity. With enough experience, you can tell who wrote what just by looking at the lines. I am also in my late 20s, and I am not native to this country, and it's my first year as guest professor. So, some students look at me as this inexperienced, gullible, foreign guy. As part of my module's grading, the students have to submit 2 reports that weight 10% each of their final grade. These reports are about image processing, and they have to code a fair bit. As usual, there are students that make an effort, some do minimal work, and then some cheat/copy. As I was grading the reports, I notice a small group of students who found reports from previous years online and literally copy plus paste those reports, changing only their name. It was a facepalm moment, because those reports were not even good, and had lot of errors. You see, in order to establish a baseline for my grading, I browsed previous year's reports, so I knew what to expect from the students of this module. Naturally, I graded them all with 0, and kept working my way through grading the reports I had left. Meanwhile, the students casually asked me in the halls how were the reports. Of course I can't comment on that until I release the grades. One time, this dude, who has copied from another report, 98% match on plagiarism checker, asks me when will I release the grades and comes with this story that he worked really hard on his reports. That his exam hasn't gone so well and he is hoping that the grade on his reports are enough to get a pass. I mean, submitting another person's work as your own is very wrong, but it was an online submission and impersonal. Right now, he was just lying through his teeth and to my face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't lost my composure and decide to come up with a plan. I knew that my exam was the last exam of the semester, and that after that the students usually go home or family vacations while they wait for their grades to be posted online. So I graded the exams and input their grades into my Excel with their report grades. For students had 0 due to cheating on their reports, and if I graded their reports with 50% of the max grade they would barely fail the module. But they would fail nonetheless. So, it was on. In order to be fair, I bumped everyone else's grades, a bunch of people with miserable reports ended up barely passing because of my grade bump. But, even though their reports were bad, it was their own work and not copied from anywhere. You see, students are entitled to make an appointment to review their grades after publishing, and before the grades are locked for the year. Basically, they sit with me, we go through their exam and reports, and their goal is to convince me to give them extra points in hope that they pass the module. I knew the cheaters would come. After all, they think they fooled me once already, and they still have half the report's points to bargain for. So I just waited for their emails. Lo and behold, they write me the same day the grades go online, saying how hard they have worked on their reports, and that they don't understand how they only got 50%. And that they wanted an appointment. I was ecstatic. Sure, let's review your grades. Do you remember that my exam was the last one? Well, they were already on vacations. Some very far away. And begged me for an online appointment. No can do. University policy. Moreover, you have 3 days to show for your appointment, otherwise the grades are locked, also university policy. So here they come, cutting their vacations short and catching planes. Some spent hours in buses and trains to make it on time. I know what many of you are thinking. They come, I show them the plagiarism checker results, and reveal that I know that is not their work, and send them on their way. Well, I considered it, but I had something better in mind. Those appointments usually take 10 minutes, I show them their work with my notes on what's wrong/right, and they try to find some inconsistencies in my grading and bargain for more points. I ain't giving you the opportunity. Mwahaha. So, one by one they sit with me individually. And I go through their exam and reports. Remember that they copied the reports? And copied bad ones, with a lot of errors. I ask questions, lots of them. Why did you do this? What is your reasoning for this? They don't know. It's know their work. They mumble random stuff, because they don't know what to answer. Point by point, mistake by mistake, I explain why it was wrong, how it should be done, lecturing the same material that they had already been lectured on during class. I make it long, I make it boring. I make it painful. I spent hours with each one of them throughout those 3 days. They always came with the same, I worked so hard on this. And a little smirk on their face because they thought that it should be really easy to fool me, the gullible foreign again. As the hours go by and I am walking through the errors one by one, I could see their expression change. Little by little, their hopes of passing being slowly crushed. And when they realized that I knew they cheated, and I wasn't going to give up any extra points. At this point they tried to cut short their appointment and leave. I wouldn't let them. We need to finish the review of your grades, it's university policy. And I just kept going, extending their misery for 1 more hour or 2. It was legal torture, plain and simple. It was glorious. At the end, every single one of them left with a crushed soul look in their eyes and a fail in my class. They knew that I caught them, that I baited them, and they fell for it. They ruined their vacation and their family vacations, spent money to travel back and forth, wasted precious summer time, got bored to death, and have nothing to show for it. And next year they will have to repeat the module, with me. I hope you enjoy your summer. See you next year.